And actually, folks, I'm going to remind you about somebody that you've probably at this point, you probably, if you're younger than I am, you've probably never even heard of this person. And if you're older than me, you've probably already forgotten him. Right? This person I'm about to show you, right? This is somebody who has just been erased from America's political memory. He's just been scratched from history. It's like he never existed. I had to dig through YouTube to find his YouTube videos. But this individual used to be a big superstar in the Democratic Party. Until 2008, this guy was, many people thought he might be the next president of the United States.
I want to start,
Does people know who this is? This is John Edwards. This guy was a Democrat frontrunner. He was John Kerry's running mate. In 2004, the Democrats ran John Kerry for president and this guy for vice president. And he was number 3 in the presidential election in the Democratic primary of 2008. It was Hillary Clinton was right behind Barack Obama. And then right behind Hillary Clinton was this guy, John Edwards. And listen to John Edwards.
I can by talking about the two Americas, which some of you have heard me talk about in the past and which are still alive and thriving in this country. But I want to be clear, when I'm talking about two Americas, I'm not just talking about the difference between the rich and the poor. I'm talking about the very rich and everybody else.
Boom!
That's the two Americas.
Boom! What did he just say there? He said, when I talk, I'm not talking about the rich versus the poor. I'm talking about the very rich versus everybody else. Boom. Boom. And that's why you've never heard of John Edwards. Because among the Frankfurt School intersectionality crowd, the reason that they use this term class reductionist is whenever they talk about economic issues, they don't see it in Marxist terms. In Marxist terms, we say what John Edwards just said. There are those who own the means of production, those who own the banks, factories, and industries, those who own the centers of economic power, and everybody else. And all of us who work for a wage are part of the working class. And there's this other class called the owning class, the capitalist class, and that is who we're in a struggle against. But that is not how the intersectionality crowd, that is not how the Frankfurt School, how the postmodernist academic people talk about income inequality. See, they say, well, there's different ways that someone can be oppressed, Caleb. Someone can be oppressed because of their skin and their race. Someone can be oppressed because of their gender. Someone can be oppressed because of their disability. Someone can be oppressed because of their sexual orientation. And ultimately, also someone can be oppressed because of their income level. You see, if you have like 10% more income than someone else, you can't relate to them. And so that gives you income privilege. Some people in America have like income privilege over other people. Oh my God. And it's like not fair. Like, you know, you have income privilege. The way the intersectional crowd talks about income inequality, they don't talk about it in Marxist terms of the owning class versus the working class. They talk about it in a way to incite members of the wage working class against each other. Don't get mad at the capitalists. Get mad at people who have 5%, 10% more than you have. Get resentful about the people that had slightly more opportunity than you. That's the way they frame things. There's different forms of oppression, Caleb. There's racism, and there's sexism, and there's homophobia, and there's transphobia, and then there's classism. And that's like one of them. But the problem with you communists is you think that only classism matters. And you're wrong, okay? There's racism, there's sexism, there's homophobia, there's transphobia. Oh my God. And you're a class reductionist. No, we're not class reductionists. No. When we talk about class, we're not talking about income level. And we're not talking about the fact that people who have 10% more, 50% more even have different opportunities. This isn't a privilege conversation. I never want to hear about privilege again because I'll let you all in on a little secret. Do you know what the definition of privilege is? I'm going to read you the definition of privilege. This is the definition of privilege. This is why we should stop talking about privilege. A privilege is a special right, advantage, or immunity granted, available only to a particular person. And the example sentence is, education is a right, not a privilege. The definition of a privilege is that it is something you are not entitled to. You are not entitled to a privilege. A privilege is not a right. A right is something that you are entitled to. But a privilege is something that can be given and taken away. And when the conversation starts to be about privilege, suddenly it slips away from the notion that people have rights. Education is not a privilege, it's a right. Healthcare is not a privilege, it's a right. Employment is a privilege, is a right, not a privilege. Not getting shot for reaching into your wallet should be a basic human right, not a privilege. The things that people of color endure on the basis of being people of color are not things that any human being should ever have to endure. No one should get shot for reaching for their wallet. So not getting shot for reaching for your wallet is not a privilege. It is a right. Not getting discriminated against in the hiring process is not a privilege. It is a right. Having access to education and healthcare, having an opportunity to feel safe in your own neighborhood, all these things that we consider to be white privilege are in reality a violation of the rights of people of color. But if you don't frame them as that, if you don't frame it as racism violates the rights of some working class people, sexism violates the rights of some working class people, transphobia, homophobia violates the rights of some working class people. If you don't frame it that way, if you instead say, well, some people have privilege, some people have privilege, some people have privilege, what is the answer? Take that privilege away. That's what the answer is. And that's what Ilhan Omar openly admitted. When she said that white workers were rallying around Trump, she said they're just mad they're losing their privilege. She's happy that they're poor. Right? Well, I think that access to jobs, healthcare, and education, access to decent employment, these kind of things aren't things that white people had and are now losing access to because of some kind of privilege. These are things that all people should enjoy. These are human rights. But if you make it about privilege, it's no longer a struggle to stop the suppression of some in order to raise everyone up. Suddenly it becomes a conversation about who has it too good and needs to get knocked down. That's how the Democratic Party now thinks. That's how the Democratic Party now thinks. Brandy discussed anything but class leftism, and I'm going to write that down. But even the way they talk about class, they think class means income level, and they think it's yet another category of oppression. And they don't understand that it's defined by relationship to the means of production. There's the capitalist class versus the working class. They don't get it. Let's listen to John Edwards. Let's talk about why you've never heard of John Edwards or you haven't heard of him since 2008.
There are so many things that we can do. For those people who say, oh, we fought a war on poverty, we can't change this. Oh, yeah, we can. I got more confidence in America than those people do. I know we can change it. Some of the things are pretty simple. Making work pay, for example. People who are working, they ought to earn a decent living wage so they can support their families. We ought to strengthen the law, reform the law, and strengthen the right to organize unions in the workplace so workers have a voice. Here's another thing we can do. We don't save anything in America. We have a negative savings rate, worst savings rate in the industrialized world, particularly for lower income families. If we teach financial literacy, if we set up bank accounts for them and match what they're able to save, so they have a reason to save, and we combine that with a national predatory lending law that cracks down on predatory and payday lenders.
Ooh. What did he just say? A predatory lending law that cracks down on payday lenders, that cracks down on those mortgage guys who ended up crashing the U.S. economy. Interesting. Regulate the bankers.
This strengthens the financial security of Americans. Health care, access to college, a decent living wage, making sure people can save, making sure people have a home to live in, decent affordable housing. All of these things are important pieces to building one America where everybody has a chance. It's just that simple. You know, when people ask me why I'm running for president, I can honestly say it in one sentence, so that everybody has the kind of chance that I've had. You know, I came from nothing, I now have everything. And sometimes I get reporters who ask me, they say, I don't understand why you're out talking about the poor. How can somebody with your resources talk about the poor? I don't claim to be poor. But does that mean I can't speak out for people who don't have a voice? Does that mean I can't stand up for the disabled, the disenfranchised, the poor? Listen, I'm here to tell you, whenever you do that, you're going to get attacked. Every time you do it, you're going to get attacked. It's always true in American history because people who have wealth and power, they do not want to hear this. They want this message to be squelched, and so they try to kill the messenger. In this case, that's me. Let me just say this very directly. They are not going to kill this voice. As long as I'm alive and breathing, I am going to stand up for people who need somebody to speak to them.
And that last bit is particularly telling. John Edwards was a huge hit with crowds, a huge hit with the crowds. Polls showed that Americans really liked what he had to say. He was really popular. Very popular. He's much more articulate than Bernie Sanders, much more charismatic than Bernie Sanders. And he just discovered that this Southern populist formula, he's from North Carolina. He was a regular Democrat, but he realized that, hey, Southern populism works. He probably listened to a lot of Bill Clinton speeches, listened to a lot of Lyndon Johnson and other famous Southern politicians. Probably listened to some Huey Long, and he said, you know what? I'm going to be the class struggle guy. And polls showed he did pretty well. Edwards came in second in the Iowa caucuses, beating Hillary Clinton. Yep, I remember very well. And then we found out that he cheated on his wife. Well, that's shitty. I mean, that's, but that's also, that's between him and his wife. That's not our business, right? That's not a public issue, right? We don't know the details of his marriage. We don't know what was going on in his private life. But just to show you how much they really went after him. Do people generally go to jail for cheating on their wife in the United States? Is that a crime? Do people get arrested for cheating on their wives? No. No, they don't. No, they don't. They generally don't get arrested. they don't get arrested for cheating on their wives. However, John Edwards, not only did he get disgraced in a national scandal that the media just ran with, and they just played up this national scandal. Oh my God, he cheated on his wife. What a bad person. He cheated on his wife. He cheated on his wife. He's a bad dude. I mean, Bill Clinton cheated on his wife. JFK cheated on his wife like every night at the White House. You know, there's a lot of corrupt politicians. I mean, how many of them were visiting Epstein's island, for Christ's sakes, right? Anyhow, they played this up. John Edwards cheated on his wife. Shitty thing to do to his wife. But that's his private life, not our business. But then, and here's the catch, they prosecuted him for campaign finance wrongdoings and argued that some of the money that had been donated to his campaign was used to help cover up cheating on his wife. And they tried to put him in federal prison because they alleged that some of the money in his campaign was used in activities that were intended to protect him from a national scandal that weren't technically included in the campaign. What? What? Huh? What? And you know, it's pretty, writing it down. Pretty hard to get acquitted in federal court in the United States. Federal prosecutors, there are rarely ever acquittals in federal court. But the charges against John Edwards in his federal trial were so flimsy that they were not actually able to put him in jail. They dragged him into federal court for cheating on his wife just to keep it in the news, and they tried to convict him, and they couldn't convict him in federal court for misusing funds to cover up cheating on his wife. Now, generally, there are many politicians that have sex scandals. Many of them throughout history have had sex scandals. But how many of them do they find some weird, long hoop financial loophole through which to prosecute them in federal court, and then that doesn't even stick because it's so ridiculous? They canceled him, right? It's like what's the old expression? They killed him dead. They say that in cowboy movies, right? Where they don't just kill somebody, they like super kill them, right? They just so they didn't just kill his career with a sex scandal. They tried to throw him in jail. They stomped on John Edwards. He was not allowed to do that anymore. He was too popular. He beat Hillary Clinton in Iowa. He was more popular than Obama in some areas, and they just stomped on John. They did sex scandal, and he spent a lot of money on a haircut. He spent so much money on a haircut and federal charges. We're going to prosecute him in federal. And they just stop. You're not allowed to have this. This guy can't exist. He can't exist. He's not calling for national health care, but he's talking the way he's talking. He's talking populism, 99%, 1%, class struggle. We cannot have this. We need intersectionality. We need to incite workers against each other. We cannot have this message. And they drove him out of politics for good. Now he's practicing law. He has a law firm. His daughter works there. They drove him out of politics for talking this way. And the Democratic Party basically has erased its history. They used to be the party of populism, of Huey Long, Dennis Kucinich. Not no more. No. Now the Democratic Party is the party of Kamala Harris. It is the party of Joe Biden. It's the party of AOC. And it's the party of, if you care about the broad masses of Americans, if you're a populist, you're a Nazi, it's the party of special interests. Let me remind you all, once again, what the Communist Manifesto says. I always want to read it to you.